Yes, Alex had decided to make a video on Desperate Housewives despite the fact that literally nobody asked for it. So here's the thing about Bree Van De Kamp from Desperate Housewives. She has one of the best arcs in all of television. Yeah, I said it. Is incredibly well written overall, and is an absolute icon. And while this video essay might seem like it has come out of nowhere, which it kinda did in my opinion, it is long overdue to appreciate this absolute gem of a character.
Well, we'll just have to find him someone who's not good at game math.
It's especially interesting that so many are in love with this character, despite the controversial place that she starts in, and it definitely speaks to the tasteful perspective that is given, that makes it easy for you to be on her side and root for her in most every situation, sometimes even when she's in the wrong. I mean, there's a conflict in the final season that pits her against all of the other housewives, and most people continue to side with Bree. Me included. So what is it about this character that makes me and so many others adore her? Well, one is that she is the perfect satire of the housewife stereotype. One big reason why I love this show so much in the first place is because of how well it plays with traditional family dynamics and takes them apart, showing the cracks that can form in the perfect front that's presented. This is especially true for Bree, who is introduced from episode 1 as the ultimate housewife, complete with the average nuclear family. She cooks, cleans, upholsters, gardens, paints. There's very little she doesn't do as a homemaker, and she does it all perfectly. While she's doing every single one of these tasks, there is a wide smile spread across her face. But it's perfectly illustrated that this smile takes a great deal of effort, and that even when her life is falling apart, she actively suppresses her emotions to present herself as the perfect, unyielding housewife. These values were taught to her from a young age, as her mother instilled how to keep up a strict mask around men, so that they never quite know what she's thinking. It always takes work for anyone to break past this mask that Bree puts up, especially since it can be so forceful at times. It's also a way for them to exercise control over their life by performing these daily rituals and routines and ensuring the, at least surface level, happiness of the family. Bree feels as though the unexpected cannot and will not happen. There's even an anecdote about Bree's experience with her mother's death that pertains to this.
Most of my family went to the hospital, but I stayed home because I was so young. When I looked out the window, I saw all of my mother's blood on the street, and nobody was doing anything about it, so I got a hose, and I washed it off. And once it was clean, I felt so much better.
She has to perform these actions, especially when the most unexpected and uncontrollable happens to her, so that she can exercise some degree of control over the chaos that is around her. There is something to be said about the compulsiveness of Bree's cleaning and cooking too, and how her need for things to be neat and orderly is not really just a desire for things to look nice. The show does a wonderful job portraying the damage that this does to her own emotional state though. By not processing her emotions and forcibly covering them up, she refuses to move forward and instead internalizes all of this rage and hatred until it explodes out of her inadvertently.
What the hell is wrong with you? Now it's ruined. Everything is ruined.
Or she self-medicates in unhealthy ways.
All right, boys, let's have it.
One part of Bree's character that I always felt was a smart choice was her struggle with alcoholism. The fact that Bree Van De Kamp, of all of the main characters, deals with alcoholism is such a powerful statement about the disease and how it can affect people. Bree is basically the paragon of self-control, but even she is powerless to resist the urge to drink to deal with her life falling apart and her son resenting her. After all, she cannot express these emotions outright, whether that be in front of her husband or in the public eye. She has to keep the perception up that nothing is ever going wrong in her household, and it takes grand gestures from good friends like Lynette for her to realize the damage that she's doing to herself and to snap out of this routine she's set to cover up everything that she's feeling inside. And not only does this lifestyle do damage to her personal emotional state, but the show also goes to great lengths to show that the repressed and emotionally distant behavior that is forced throughout the household only serves to the detriment of the familial relationships, in all aspects. We meet Bree in the throes of a marital conflict with her husband Rex, who asks her for a divorce in the very first episode.
I want a divorce. I just can't live in this this detergent commercial anymore.
Her cold demeanor and inability to express real emotion has only distanced her from her husband, and I can understand at least Rex's frustration with her and their marriage. He is right, none of it does feel real, and when he commented on the bizarre way her hair doesn't move, I also kinda had to laugh. She has become a mannequin of sorts, an ideal, no longer a full person, at least in Rex's eyes, because she's not willing to show that real side of her to him. He even goes so far as to have an affair because he's extremely uncomfortable being honest with Bree about what he needs out of their sex life. Now, none of this is Bree's fault, all of this is on Rex, but I will say that the life of harsh restraint definitely takes its toll on a person's mental state.
We're, wasps, Dr. Goldfine. Not acknowledging the elephant in the room is what we do best.
And the acting out of all of her close family members is definite proof of that. Her daughter Danielle protests to be of the same values at first, even being the president of the Abstinence Club, which later becomes extremely ironic, but reveals to be much more rebellious than she might seem. I mean, she wants to sleep with John Rowland and has an affair with her history teacher. She's even morally dubious. I'll be honest, she's not my favorite person. She's friends with Julie, but when Austin, Edie's nephew, comes to town and dates Julie, Danielle resolves to cheat with Austin and lie to her friend, then even becoming pregnant with a child out of wedlock. Now, while I personally don't think this is all that scandalous, for Bree Van De Kamp, with her strict Protestant values self-protested, it is an absolute debacle. And the scramble on Bree and Orson's part to cover up the pregnancy and make sure that nobody finds out so that their family wouldn't be embarrassed is also genius. Not only is it a fantastic comedic apparatus for multiple episodes, but it also illustrates the ridiculous lengths that she will go to preserve her family's image in the public eye, and to keep up that mask of perfection that allows her control over everything. Overall, it's just excellent satire of the stereotype of a character. I mean, she doesn't even tell the girls about this lie after they make a pact not to keep anything from one another, only revealing it when she was forced to by Edie. And again, forcing that sort of lifestyle and asking a child and everyone around you to behave so vigorously to what you believe will only have the opposite effect, as Andrew, her son, pretty much directly says.
Sometimes when you push a kid really hard to go one way, the other way starts to look more entertaining.
And speaking of Andrew, he is the biggest example of the detriment of these strict 50s style values in this family. While Andrew does develop into an amazingly textured character, and I'd love to do a video about him one day, in the first 2 seasons of the show, he's kind of a nightmare. In a general rebellious child sense, yes, but also mostly for Bree's very old-fashioned values. In season 1, it's revealed that Andrew is gay, and Bree does not take this news well at all.
Mom, I don't need any help. All right? I'm fine. Oh, why do you keep going on about this?
Because if you don't change who you are, then you won't go to heaven.
As one could expect, I mean, from who we are introduced to and how very publicly she is a Protestant Republican. And honestly, this turned me off of her character at first, which is why it's still shocking to me that she ended up becoming my favorite. And not only this, but he goes to a strip club early in the season, he drives drunk, hitting a neighbor's parent and putting them in a coma, and then he almost shows no remorse for it. He pushes Bree around, he sleeps with Bree's prospective boyfriend who is a sex addict. It's all very alarming behavior, and it's easy to take Bree's side against him, even when you know that that oppressive state of the house is largely the reason why he acts out so much. And I am sort of glad that it went to this extreme, because it shows just how destructive that forceful hand can be on children. When we see her meet Mary Alice and move on to the lane for the first time, we see the contempt that her family kinda already holds for her, as she forces everyone around her to bend to her will. They also wonderfully twist this stereotype into a rather strong-willed character too, not resolving to adhere strictly to the guidelines of that dutiful housewife. Instead of the perceived demure, timid wife who never speaks up, Bree has complete charge over her household and controls everyone in it. And even after her first husband, she actually has to struggle with that issue of control, needing to have everyone in her life be perfect, especially as she strikes up her own business. Plus, she's a renowned gun owner and touts the fact that she carries her own firearms without any apprehension. In fact, when a boyfriend becomes a little bit too clinging, she just straight up shoots at him in her front yard. It's just such a wonderful twist on the Republican housewife stereotype, and one that actually endears you to her, even if I largely disagree with her on gun control, because she is so strong-willed and confident. It's easy to like someone who acts like that. Another reason why people love Bree Van De Kamp so much is the incredible and visible development that she has. Over the course of the series, we see Bree compromise a lot of the values that she previously adhered to so strictly, and learned that not everything in the world is black and white or so rigid. We first see this in season 1 after Andrew runs over Juanita Solis, drunk. Instead of going to the police, Bree immediately moves to hide the car, coming up with a clever and rather underhanded plan to have it stolen to prevent the cops from figuring out it was theirs. And she lies to one of her closest friends, Gabby, even though she knows her husband is in serious pain from the ordeal. She's willing to compromise a lot of those values that she protested in the first few episodes right off the bat. Also in season 1, in an effort to preserve her marriage with Rex and that perfect public life that she has built for herself, she even experiments sexually after Rex admits his propensity for S&M. In order to preserve that perfect perception, she had to indulge in something she saw as unseemly and untraditional, twisting that view of the perfect world and marriage that she held in her head. Those values were constantly undermined if she wanted to hold on to that control that she desperately needed. Later, in season 2, after Rex has passed, she has to work through alcoholism, from admitting there was a problem to actually being able to deal with it, and going to AA. The show handles this in an extremely realistic and tasteful way, showing that Bree will try to keep up that perfect illusion to her friends that nothing is wrong until they forcibly shatter it for her and break through that harsh veil that she forces up, and show her that even she, the perfect housewife, needs to admit that she requires help and that she does have a compulsive personality.
And if you ever do have a problem or you just feel like talking, give me a call, okay?
I know you think I'm kidding myself, but I'm not. I'm nothing like you people. I just don't have a compulsive personality.
She can't, in the end, control everything in her life, and sometimes, and it's okay to admit this, you do need help from somebody else. It takes a lot of bravery to admit something like this to yourself, and even more so to decide to do something about it, and to talk to others so openly, especially for Bree, who was taught pretty much to hide everything she was feeling from a very young age. At first, she does it only to maintain that perfect perception in her friends' eyes, but eventually she's able to realize the issue with what she's doing to herself and admit to needing help. Instead of doing it to preserve her own image, she actually does it to better herself, which leads to her abandonment of that need for the traditional perfect image, or at least it's the first step along the way. She even relapses later in the show several times, showing that while she is resilient and she has learned, it is not a constantly upward curve. There are ups and downs, and Bree understands that she cannot declare herself officially healed or perfect. She has to continue to work, and once again, nothing is so black and white, and she can't hold control over everything. Also in season 2, she comes to terms with Andrew's homosexuality and gradually learns to accept it. This was likely the most important development for her, if you ask me. Rather obvious opinion, TBH. I really resented her for what she said to Andrew after he came out to her, but the show does a really great job transitioning into Bree becoming much more understanding and accepting through her personal vices. At first, she uses Andrew's boyfriend for personal gain to get Andrew not to move away, and again, preserve that image to all of her friends and neighbors. But she actually ends up enjoying Justin's presence, Andrew's boyfriend, and feels that he's rather nice and at least decent for her son. She invites him to their family dinner and even encourages Andrew to see him further. This is the first gateway into Bree making concessions for her previously rigid principles. She needed to understand that not everything can adhere to her worldview, and that nearly nothing is black and white. I really appreciate this type of growth for this stereotype. She even had to relinquish control to keep it overall. She can't have everything bend to her own will and keep up that clever camouflage for her acquaintances. And because of this, by season 4, she has completely come around. She encourages Andrew to date other men, she accidentally forces him to be Cher for Halloween.
And who are you supposed to be?
Cher, the beloved pop diva.
It was my mom's idea. You know, the woman who freaked when she found out I was gay.
And she has a positive relationship with Andrew overall, eventually welcoming his future husband, Alex, into her home and family in season 5 with no prodding necessary. In fact, she actively digs into the relationship when her son tries to hide it from her. I like that it wasn't an immediate switch either. Bree was accepting, but a bit comically insensitive in seasons 3 and 4, even though it was clear that she loved her son and had no personal issues with him.
Andrew is also an out and proud homosexual.
He's here, he's queer, and we're used to it.
Since when? You're pimping me out for a new roof?
And windows.
It takes her time to learn the appropriate way to act as well, as it would for anyone who has to go through such a major moral change. It's just more realistic to write it this way, and it makes Bree seem more grounded and down to earth as a character, and less like a stereotype. Plus, her understanding feels super earned, so that when she supports him so much later, it makes sense, and it feels gratified. I especially love in the final season when Andrew brings home a woman and tries to convince Bree that his homosexuality was just a phase, and she immediately denies it, and asserts that it took her a while, but she knows that he is gay, and he is clearly just dating this girl for money. It's a fantastic way to show how far she's come in these seasons to just accepting her son, and how close they've gotten over the course of the show. Plus, later in the show, after the 5-year time skip, Bree even uses her skills to start a business for herself, instead of resolving to just make another man happy as a wife, writing a cookbook and starting her own catering company that turns into quite a success. And when Orson becomes frustrated with her for having a position of power and not being Mrs. Orson Hodge, she still resolves to keep her business and believe in her own ability. She doesn't give everything up for her husband, even while tempted to. She realizes that her marriage and the appearance of happiness is not as important as her actual happiness. And this decision was such an important turn for her character. And it's actually Andrew that helps her realize this too, showing how her development and personal growth aids her familiar relationships. He now looks out for her well-being and truly cares for her happiness, and will help her make the right decision in the end. Unfortunately, in the next season, when Andrew's accident with Juanita Solis threatens the business, she concedes it in order to protect the lie. But I do think this still speaks to how far Bree has come, where she is willing to give up some of the most important things in her life to protect those closest to her, including her morality. And this even costs her her current husband. It just speaks to how much she's willing to give up in terms of the values she began with. I could not see Bree from season 1 doing any of this. And her husband Orson sees this too, which is why he leaves. He saw her as a paragon of virtue, forcing him to admit his crimes and go to prison, and for her to turn away from that, it compromises his image of her. After he leaves, she also goes through a serious period of growth. Having no business and no husband, she really has to find out what she wants out of her life besides professional and personal accomplishments. And along comes Keith. Honestly, I wish she ended up with this guy. It's so clear how far Bree has come due to her relationship with Keith, rather than the refined, sophisticated type that Orson was, her last husband. Keith is much more simple, grounded, and down to earth, showing that Bree is a much more open and honest person than before. In her relationship with him, that mask is barely there. She keeps it up initially to prove that she's young enough for him, but eventually lets it drop in an effort to be candid and really know him. She states herself,
I have never worked harder in my life to keep a relationship.
And actively jumps in horse manure in front of Orson to prove that even if Keith is different than her, he helps her to grow and see the world differently and in a more nuanced way. It's a shame that this relationship doesn't work out, with Keith ending up moving away, but her being willing to give him up just speaks again to her moving further into being a more genuine person, and not selfish and reserved. But perhaps her biggest jump in terms of development comes with covering up a murder and committing so heavily to a close friend. When Carlos kills Gabby's attacker, Bree resolves to organize a cover-up to make sure that he doesn't go to prison. She immediately moves to protect those that helped her grow over these years, rather than adhere to those values she spoke so highly of earlier in the show. She compromises her boyfriend, her morality, not to mention tons of her own time, all in an effort to protect those who don't have a blood tie to her. This is an extraordinary difference from the woman we've seen in seasons prior, and is the culmination of all these small concessions she's made over all of this time we've spent with her. She's sacrificed more and more of the woman she thought she had to be, the woman her mother taught her to be, until she found she was able to do the unthinkable. And there's even more examples besides these. Bree's affair with Carl Meyer, where she goes to places we never thought Bree would even be willing to go. But overall, there's just so much evidence of self-work and reflection on Bree's part, even through her errors. And all the mistakes she made with her children, her first husband, and her parents, she resolved to be more flexible, to cast aside her mask at times, and to allow herself to be who she truly was, and to go for what she actually wanted. Another reason why people love Bree Van De Kamp is her extreme resilience. It's hard not to root for someone who keeps getting back up after being beaten down so many times. Everyone loves an underdog, and boy, does Bree go through the motherfucking fucking ringer this entire series. Her first husband dies after an extremely longer journey where they nearly divorce and then finally reconcile. And immediately afterwards, she's stalked by an obsessive pharmacist who ruins her entire personal life, both with her husband and her child, later revealed to have killed her first husband. She has a falling out with her son and abandons him on the side of the road, and trust me, everyone wanted her to do this after the way her son acted. After taking care of her daughter's baby, she takes him away from her, leaving her alone with her next husband, Orson, in prison. Then, Orson becomes cruel to her, so she takes a lover until her lover dies in a tragic plane crash, and Orson is paralyzed. She works super hard to reconcile with Orson and work through their issues after they both had hurt each other a great deal, and then once they finally reach an accord, Orson leaves Bree when she protects Andrew for his accident again. Her boyfriend Keith moves away after she goes through a ton of hard work on herself to keep the relationship alive. She has to leave her new cop boyfriend for the sake of covering up a murder for her friend and the lie she started for it, which also involves several near imprisonments and constant interrogation from the police, including a fun personal vendetta from her ex and then her ex's colleague, several relapses and abandonments from those closest to her. Even in the last season, when she covers for the worst possible secret, she is left alone and then relapses, leaving her in the possibly darkest place ever and susceptible to predators who once again take advantage of her when she's vulnerable. It's actually astonishing the amount of shit that Bree goes through and how she's able to come out on top and keep moving forward every single time. Not only does that characterize her as an extremely strong person, but it also helps the audience sympathize and often empathize, since she goes through such a variety of different issues with her, and only makes you want to root for her more and more as the series goes on and as the issues pile up. And once she does find happiness and her place in the world, even having a position in Congress at the end of the series, you feel such joy and gratification for all the work that she did and everything she had to go through. It does all feel worth it. And the last reason why this character is so well loved is Marcia Cross's performance. I mean, there's a reason she was nominated for an Emmy and 3 Golden Globes. And also, by the way, what a crime that she never won anything. She so deserved an award for this performance. It is masterful. I hate the Golden Globes. She is able to switch from devastated to fake happy in seconds, and has the best fake smile of any actress I've seen in a long time.
Rex passed away about 10 minutes ago.
Well, thank you very much for calling.
Not only this, but there's a very clear distinction between her fake happy face and when there is actual true joy. Marcia Cross knows the subtle difference between a fake and a real smile, and more importantly, knows how to make a smile look broad and friendly, but not at all genuine or honest. And it has to be said, this performance is so cunty.
Oh my.
The smug, arrogant looks that Bree gives to her opponents when she's bested them in social combat are nothing short of delicious, and is one of the biggest reasons you just can't get enough of seeing this lady win. When she's determined, she will kick down doors and show you unrestrained rage you wouldn't have thought possible for someone with such a friendly and warm face.
Mom?
He hung up on me.
What are you gonna do?
Which is a wonderful and comedic side to see, especially when she's trying to protect people she cares about.
But I just can't ask anyone to make that kind of sacrifice for me. Maybe she can't, but I can.
And when she knows she has won, she is able to deliver the most clever and devastating one-liners. Bree is one of quick wit, and a lot of her lines are said with a smile, so it's important for the actress to be able to capture that passive-aggressive and condescending tone extremely well.
And I'm sure if you put your mind to it, you can come up with an even better lemon meringue pie than mine. The trick is finding that perfect blend of sweet and sour.
Well, you've certainly mastered that, dear.
or else the meaning of many of these insults and jokes would fly over the viewers' heads. But Marcia Cross has such an element of sweetness and honey in her voice that she can also quickly transfer into cold and harsh in an instant. Balancing that with her insults and being able to swiftly transition for comedic effect is an extraordinary skill, and I commend her so much for being able to master this even further as the seasons go on. Seriously, by the last episode, Bree Van De Kamp is just an effortless character for her. You can never see one out of character moment or any look that would indicate that she is not Bree in that very second. Even if the writing sometimes maybe got wonky, because you know, it's a long show, it's a little inconsistent at times, the portrayal of this character never did. Anyway, those are all the reasons why I think people love Bree Van De Kamp. If you have anything else, let me know in the comments below. I would love to talk about this show more, and let me know if there's anything else from this show that you'd like me to make a video about. Please tell me to make more videos about this show. I really want to. But if you want to support us further, you can go to patreon.com/PosiTVty, that's PosiTVty. There you get all these videos weeks before they go up on YouTube, and you get the unedited video essays so you can hear all of my mistakes. There were quite a few in this video, you know, redos, and you can hear the original script before I decide to change things because I get self-conscious. So it's a really fun way to get more content for yourself, but also help out the channel. Plus, if you're a patron and you request something, I'm going to make that video pretty much immediately. It goes right to the top of the queue. So go there if you want some extra content. You can join for free if you want a sneak preview, but we appreciate all your support on YouTube as well. Let us know what we should make next. And thank you again so much for watching this extremely long video about Bree Van De Kamp. I doubt anybody made it to the end, but hey, if you did, I congratulate you. Yeah, I congratulate you. And if you love Bree Van De Kamp as much as I do, you know, we should start a club or something. I should probably just end this video. I'm talking for way too long.